All right, let's go ahead and get going. Hey everyone, and welcome to this free web class. My name is John Crestani, and I'm excited you're here today because on this call, I'm going to show you the 3 steps to making $10,000 or more in passive online income using what I call profit cycles. Now, the good news is this is something that can be done from home without a lot of hard costs, without a lot of experience, and without a lot of capital to get started with a new business on. Now, what I'm going to do is show you how our students have been making around $5,000 to $6,000 using completely free methods. I'm also going to show you how you can scale this business to $10,000 or more per month, and how some of our students are doing so. And some of our students are even doing $10,000 a day using this method. So what you're going to see today is a much easier and faster way for the average person that doesn't really have a lot of time to put into starting a new business. So really anyone can get started. And in the interest of time, I want to do a few things here. First, I want to show you proof that this works. Now, I know there's a lot of fluff and BS on the internet these days, and I hate that I have to do this, but I just want to take a moment to show you that we practice what we preach and really prove to you that this is real. Okay, folks, so I just turned off my video. What you're seeing is a presentation I've prepared for you here. But first, let me show you the proof of the results that I've earned using this system. Okay, folks, so as you see, I just logged into my account here to show you what's possible applying this system. Now, as you see, I've been able to earn a significant amount of money in just 1 year period using this system. What you see is exactly $4.1 million in 1 year. And I'm going to show you even more proof here shortly, and even more bigger and more recent proof. But this was made from implementing exactly what I'm going to share here today. And I truly believe there's no better way to make money than this. But what really matters is not my results that I've been able to get from this, but my students' results. Because what good is a money-making system if others can't duplicate it? Okay, so here's the students' results. So you can see here, the good news is that this works for folks around the world, not just me. It works for beginners, starting to make over $200 every single day, as you see here. This works for folks in 9-to-5 jobs. You can see Ryan here made over $103,000 doing this. It works for folks around the world, making thousands of dollars. And it works for folks who have failed before. You see $7,800 earned right here. You see $10,000 in sales right here. This works for folks that are younger and older, and it works quickly. You see $71,000 in a single month of profit for Ronnie right here. Now, second, before we kick off the training, I want to show you I'm also I'm a reputable person, and doing what we share here today, I've been featured in many publications such as Forbes, who wrote an article about how I got fired from my 9-to-5 job, and I went on to build a $500,000 a month business while traveling the world. I've been featured in Business Insider, I've been featured in the newspaper, I've been featured on San Diego Connect, on TV, on Now This, on entrepreneur.com, on morning shows around the world. I even had my own infomercial on television that's been running for years. Now, let me explain a little bit more about my story and who I am in just a moment here. Now, folks, because of the results I've gotten for myself and for many others, I've grown a huge following online. Now, maybe you've seen my big beard on the internet before, but I've become somewhat known online, and now I have over 400-some thousand subscribers on YouTube. But what matters most to me is that helping you get results and change your life and your financial future. And that's why, third, here's a quick overview of what we're going to cover, okay? So, first, a new way to sell other people's profit products, to start making $5,000 from scratch, all from home and fast. This takes about 30 to 45 minutes a day or less to do, and this can be done in your spare time if that's all you have. I'm going to show you how I went from zero to earning over $21 million doing this so far, and how other people just like you are doing this successfully as well. Even better, I'm going to show you how you can get this business going and start earning for free as early as today. And you can do this without a lot of tech skills or experience, and you can make your first sale in as little as 48 hours. You only need a laptop or a desktop computer and an internet connection to get started. Next, I'm going to show you how to leverage someone else's hard work and someone else's money to get started faster. Someone else has done 90% of the work for you. I'm going to show you how I copied and pasted my way to millions of dollars of success and how my students are doing the same. And lastly, I'm going to show you how to replicate this business model in the easiest way so you can start right away from your home. And even better, I have a subtle bribe for you. Listen, I know this information can really help change your life and your business, but I'll tell you right now, the information won't do anything unless you take action and implement it. So I want you to make money from today, and I want you to do it fast. So right now, just X out of those other tabs you're on, store your phone away, put it on silent, pay close attention here, because if you promise to stay into the end and really engaged here, I'm going to give you 2 bonuses. The first one is I'm going to show you a new step-by-step beginner-friendly method for growing to $5,000 and more for free. You can only get it if you stay into the end of this presentation. I'm also going to give you a paint-by-numbers breakdown of how to scale to $10,000 and so much more. So stay into the very end and we'll make sure to send that your way. Our software tracks if you stay into the end, so make sure you're engaged so you can get the bonuses. Now, our results and our students' results are only possible because I've done the work and I've spent tens of millions of dollars learning the wrong way to build businesses. I've perfected the one you're going to see today, and this is particularly easy and fast to get started because you don't need a lot of experience. You don't need any money up front to start. You don't need any technical skills. You're not going to need to speak to anybody in person or do sales. You don't need to travel or leave your home. You don't need an existing business. You don't need to work hours each day. You don't need to quit your job, and you don't need to spend years to get results. And the good news is that this is not cold calling, e-commerce, sales, MLM, funnel stuff. It's e-commerce. It's none of that. This is brand new, and it's getting results fast for our students. You can see right here, Anna made $1,500 in a single day from her home computer without leaving her house. This is working right now with students making sales today, sometimes within hours of just turning this on. In fact, other people in your same shoes that have watched this same class have gone on to be making money from what we're going to share. Amit made $861. Charles made $361. Moad made over $7,800. Nazmul made over $20,000. And Tyler here completely changed his life. You'll hear more about him later, but Tyler was a Mormon pastor. He still is a Mormon pastor, and he now owns an internet business making over $1.4 million. Now, I'm going to show a lot of student results here, but why should you even care, right? Well, it's because today you're going to learn the shortest path to making this work completely from scratch for yourself, just like it worked for them, in 3 simple steps with virtually no competition and in a way that can be done without a lot of hard work or startup costs. And if I were you, I'd make sure to stay until the very end of this training, because once you see this, you'll see how shockingly simple and obvious this is, and you'll want to get started right away. And honestly, folks, the time is now. There's never been a more important time to get started because of, of course, COVID. A recent study before COVID showed that a shocking 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Even more than that, 70% of Americans have less than $1,000 in a savings account. And that's mainly because of debt. Most people are drowning in credit card debt, auto loans, mortgages, student loans, medical debt, you name it. Now, I'd heard this before, and I always thought when I had debt that my financial situation it'll just get better. And that the longer I held out hope and the longer I'd work, the better I'd be. And, I'd eventually be good for retirement. But the facts strongly disagree with that. A recent survey showed that as much as 45% of folks are retiring without any money. 64% are not prepared at all. Those first two groups right there. And when they were asked why they retired without money, they said it's because I don't make enough money to save. Because of that and the uncertainty in the economy because of COVID and everything else, having additional income has never been more important. No one here needs to struggle with paying bills or drowning in debt or living paycheck to paycheck, even though that's somehow become the new norm. It's crazy because there's never been more opportunity than there is right now to grow an income from home in your spare time when you know how to do it. The internet is booming during these rough times. It's not slowing down. And today I'm going to show you how to capture this opportunity in the easiest, fastest, the most effective way possible in your spare time. So with that being said, what would you do with an additional $5,000 in passive income? I know that's a little weird and it's kind of a cheesy question to ask, but before we get going, you should understand your why before starting something new. Not only so you really give it your all, but also so that your time is well spent and you get the best results. Maybe you want to be set up for retirement. Maybe you want to wipe out that debt or get financial and time freedom for yourself. Maybe you want the chance to make more money than your job will ever let you. Maybe you want that $5,000 passive income just so it's in the bank every month. Just starting thinking about your why you want this. Because here's the sad truth. Most folks are worried about retirement and saving. Most folks can't afford to quit their job. They can't afford to travel to the places they've always wanted to go, and they can't provide for their families the ways they intended years ago. You see, I really want to share this with you because I've already used the system to achieve what many folks would consider the dream and a life of financial freedom. And I often get lots and lots of people asking me how they can get started doing what I do because they've seen the dramatic impact it's had on my life and my family's life since I started implementing it. You see, my life looks so much different than it did 5 or 10 years ago. This was me. I wasn't always as successful as I am today. 5 years ago, if you took a look at me, you'd see that I wasn't smarter and still not smarter than anyone else around me. You'd see that I honestly never thought of starting a business. All I wanted was stability and a stress-free life. But instead, I had to resort to really extreme measures to pay my bills because I had no money. And I'll get into that in just a minute. You see, I did everything the right way that society tells you to do. I went to college, I got good grades, but at the end of it all, I was $50,000 in debt and I needed to look for a job to pay that debt off. Right? So I ended up getting a job in corporate America out here in Los Angeles, and the right way started feeling wrong. I was coming home every day dissatisfied with who I was, driving an hour each day, each way to work, 2 hours a day driving and trading time for money. And before COVID was even a thing, I felt like my job was unstable and not necessarily long-term. My job wasn't making me enough money to save. Much like that survey we shared earlier, I could barely afford rent. But again, I'd done everything the right way. I went to a good school, got in debt, my bills were piling up, and I felt like I couldn't escape it. And to make things worse, honestly, 76% of my life was dedicated to my boss, Mr. Glickstein, and growing his business. Even though I spent so much time doing that, I never got a raise, never got a good job, John, and I really didn't have any job security. I dreaded waking up to that alarm clock every day and going to work. But the consistent paycheck, career was worth the pain, right? That's what society always preached to me, to all of us. Society told me that in a few years, things would change, things would pay off, that I'd be better off. Well, those years passed, and you know what? I was in the same place. I'd pay off my living expenses, pay off my debt, and I barely had anything left afterwards. And even though I could barely afford my bills, I always felt like I was one mistake away or one big bill away from being prepared. If my car broke down, got in an accident, I got sick, somebody in my family got sick, I'd be in serious financial trouble. And while all that was happening, my boss, Mr. Glickstein, was laughing all the way to the bank from my hard work. You see, I was trying to work my way up in the company. I was working a lot, but never made an extra dime for savings. It all went towards my debt from college, my expenses, my bills, etc. I even helped grow my boss's business over $800,000 in just a few years. And you know how much of that I made? None. It all went to him. It was embarrassing too because I wanted to marry my girlfriend at the time, but I couldn't even afford her a ring. I was looking into these different rocks such as like moissanite and fake diamond rings because I had no money and I couldn't even afford those. Now, as you'd imagine, I was doubting if this is going to work for me. I started feeling like no matter what job I went to, whether it was another company, another location, another boss, I'd always be around another Mr. Glickstein somewhere. I felt like I'd have to work another 40 to 50 years to be in a better spot and that I was barely staying ahead of my bills. I felt cornered. It was either stay miserable in my 9-to-5 job, and if I didn't, I'd have no money and I wouldn't be able to afford my bills. It was just a lose-lose situation. But again, this is what society, my parents, and all my friends did. This is what was supposed to lead to prosperity. The way I felt at that moment was like I was just drowning. I was underwater, trying to come up for air, but I couldn't. Like I was at the bottom of a deep pool, swimming harder and harder, trying to reach the top. My air's running out and I was just panicking. I couldn't breathe. And it was for that reason I did something absolutely nuts. And this is really out there, but it's true. I was so behind on my bills that I resorted to being what you call a human guinea pig. Now on the weekends, I take experimental medicine and get my body tested, poked, prodded for money. And because all this medicine was untested, I was throwing up all the time. I felt pretty humiliated, very embarrassed to tell any people around me what was going on. And even with that job, even with the experimental testing, which was drugs from major companies you all would have heard of, I could barely afford my rent still. I could barely pay off my credit card bill on time, and I was living virtually paycheck to paycheck, and I needed something different. But that wasn't even the worst of it. I was working overtime, and at this point, I'd spent years working for my boss, Mr. Glickstein. I went to college just to get a job like the one I had. I was spending all my time, all my life, in an office doing something I disliked, and I was making this guy rich. I'd make him over $800,000 in profits for him personally, and I didn't see a penny of it. So there came a point when I just couldn't take it anymore. It'd been years and I'd never seen a raise. So I finally went into my boss's office to ask for a raise or some sort of bonus or something. And I'd spent the entire week preparing for this meeting with him. I'd prepared every question he might ask me for why I might deserve this raise. And after I laid out my case for why I deserved something, and I remember this like it was yesterday, he just let the room sit in silence. He just looked at me. Then he let out a little smirk on the side of his face, and he said, "Or what?" Like, in other words, if I don't give this to you, John, what are you going to do? He knew I had no other options, and he even knew that if he said no to me, I wouldn't have any other options than to stick with him anyways. He knew I couldn't afford to leave the company. So there I was, back to the drawing board. My options were quit and have nothing. Doing that, I'd probably lose everything and struggle to find another job if we're realistic. Or choice number 2 is I could stick with my job and suffer another 30 years getting nothing that I wanted. But I already knew this was a guaranteed loss and that I'd be unfulfilled, I'd struggle, and I'd just be unhappy. Or choice number 3 was to build a side business. I knew it would be a big challenge for me to do and work for myself, but if I could get it off the ground, I could maybe have what I wanted and the struggle could be worth it. Now, this wasn't the first time I'd considered this choice, right? Everyone around me in the past told me it was risky, that side businesses would never work out, and they're right, but not entirely. If you look at McDonald's, it costs about $1 million to start. That's way too risky. And other places have hard costs or employees or equipment or buildings, or maybe $50,000 in costs to start the business. And I knew that I could instead start an online business that costs virtually nothing to start. And thankfully, it costs almost nothing to start because, again, I had nothing. And on top of that, these folks giving me this advice were in the same situation I was in. They were working jobs and unhappy with their jobs too. So I ignored their advice.